Hi, welcome to Food All You Never Wanted to Know. Today, you see here, I have some greens here. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to have to use some cheat sheet notes because I have an awful lot to cover, and some of this is a little bit controversial, which I don't usually do on my channel, but this is something that I'm really adamant about, is very important to me to try to explain. So yesterday I did a video of rutabagas and carrots that I had picked in the hoop house. Now the rutabagas, I don't remember what variety they were. They were kind of small because I planted them late in the fall, later than I should have, and I thought, oh, they're gonna be tough because they didn't grow very fast. Well, I cut them up, I steamed them a little, and then I sauteed them a little bit in olive oil, added some, I don't think I added some spices at all. I just cooked them and they were tender. They were so good. And when you go to a regular store and you buy rutabagas, you'll get this big thing that usually is pretty old and it has wax. They've been dipped into wax. And so before you cook it, you need to cut all that wax off. And it's quite a job. So using fresh rutabagas is a new experience for a lot of people, and it's really, really delicious. Now, rutabagas are very good nutritionally. They have they're a yellow color, a golden color inside. So when you think yellow or gold or orange, think vitamin A. So they are rich in vitamin A and carotene. They also have potassium, manganese, B6, magnesium, phosphorus. So it's a good vegetable, and if you get a good one, not one that's old or the wrong variety or grown wrong, this is why we need to learn to grow our own vegetables. They can be really, really delicious, a little bit sweet. They're sweeter than turnips, not as sweet as sweet potatoes, okay? Now, the greens, did you know you could eat the greens? We're gonna do this a little bit later. We're gonna show how to cook them. And the nutrition in the rutabaga leaves is very similar to any green that is in the cabbage family. So think kale, think collards, those sorts of things. I actually couldn't find a nutrition list for rutabaga leaves. So if any of you can manage to do that, and if you can put it in a comment, I'd appreciate it. So collards, I'm going to assume they're pretty much like collards. Collards are high in vitamins K, A, and C, antioxidants and fiber, calcium. They also contain choline, which is a neurotransmitter that helps muscles, sleep, and mood, among other things. And if anyone knows, okay, so you may not know that radishes are also in the cabbage family. Did you know that? And they are absolutely delicious. Radish leaves sauteed. You won't be able to get decent radish leaves most likely from a store, but if you grow them, even if the bulbs don't form, you can use the leaves, chop them up, saute them, put a few spices in there. They're absolutely delicious. They're not hot once you cook them. So again, if your radishes don't form tops, don't throw the tops away. Don't form bottoms, the root, don't throw them away. We're going to pause for a sec. I'm going to put those notes over there. So I'm going to get a little bit controversial here at this point and mention a sore point that most people are not aware of, have no idea of. Years ago, when certain companies went into certain countries and were encouraging them to buy and grow their genetically modified seeds, they also sold people the herbicides that went with those seeds. They were necessary in order to grow the genetically modified seed. Usually the herbicide was glyphosate or Roundup. Well, glyphosate is a major component of Roundup, and that would be used to drench the GMO plants without killing them, but the non-GMO weeds would die. Nowadays, some weeds have become resistant and they're called super weeds. And so now they're creating different GMO crops that use even worse herbicides than the original. So first of all, studies now show that crops sprayed with herbicides often contain residues of those herbicides in the food. And if you've paid attention to the Roundup cancer connection in the news, you know it's not good to be eating herbicides. I don't want to be eating herbicides with my food. And again, this is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. It's very ridiculous to me that this has even happened. So I'll put some info in the description, hopefully, if I can figure out how to do it. I'm not too good at doing this stuff, but I'm going to try, about some studies on this topic. If you want to read more, look at the research that's cited in these research papers. They mention possible endocrine disruptors, gut issues, emotional problems, metabolism problems, the liver, all this kind of stuff. Now, early on in my self-education about this topic, I heard one scientist, Dr. Don Huber, talk about how bad this was for people. And he was berated at the time for this. It was really, really sad. He talked about how young men in their 20s who worked in the sugarcane fields in South America had unheard of rates of kidney failure, literal kidney failure in their 20s. One of their jobs was spraying Roundup on the fields. Now, granted, there are other factors such as possibly heat, dehydration. There are other things too that were connected, but this was something that they did, was spray these poisons as part of their work. And so I'll try to leave the information again on those articles. So what does this have to do with rutabaga leaves? Rutabagas are not genetically modified, but as I mentioned, they're very, very rich in nutrition. Now, GMO proponents at one time gushed about something called golden rice. This genetically modified rice was supposed to give people in countries where they couldn't get enough vitamin A, and the children's eyes were being affected by being deficient in A. They were talking about how this genetically modified rice was going to cure that problem because they would have vitamin A in the rice. Well, it turns out you would need to eat bowlfuls of this rice to get enough vitamin A to get your recommended daily allowance. And people aren't going to do that. They're just not. So back in some of those countries, the people would eat nutritious weeds, things that we would consider to be weeds, probably are nothing more than things such as this in the fields. They would eat those weeds, and those weeds were full of nutrition, full of vitamin A and tons of other vitamins. Then came the GMOs. The GMO monocrops, which means you'd have fields and fields of one kind of crop. They would spray it with a Roundup or any other kind of herbicides. It would kill everything except the GMO crop. What happened to the greens? The greens were killed by the Roundup. So these people no longer had the vitamin A rich greens that they would eat in their fields. Do you see the problem here? So there went the free vitamin A, and now these companies are coming saying, hey, we're going to sell you GMO yellow rice that's going to cure your eyesight problems. Well, they had the cure all along in these junky, what people normally think of as junky garbage, which really were very nutritious and good for them. So I'm going to cut up these rutabaga leaves, sorry. What you want to do when you're cooking them is take the main stem in the middle off, because that might be a little bit fibrous. So we're going to do that and come back in a minute. Okay, so in this pan I've put some olive oil, and I like the extra virgin. I know you shouldn't overheat olive oil. These are the rutabaga greens that I've cut off the stems and chopped up. I think I'm going to use my hand because this cutting board is super loud. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so I put that in there. And a little onion powder. Oops, that wasn't a little, so we'll see how that is. And some garlic powder. So basically olive oil, onion powder, garlic powder. I use that a lot when I'm doing greens. Adding spoon, and greens don't take very much time. You can put salt if you want. I don't use a lot of salt in my cooking. I do use it in baked goods. You need some salt. And you just, some people like it just very lightly sauteed. That might be a little bit on the hot side. And there we go. How done should we make it, dear?
To taste.
Okay.
We should mention this is the 9th of February.
Yep. Yep. 9th of February, fresh greens from the garden.
2023.
In the hoop house. Okay. You could do this under cold frames, I believe. It got pretty cold this year, though. We were in the single digits at one point, so I don't know. I'm going to call this done enough. What do you think? And as you see, a lot of greens melt down to be very small. You can also use these in soups, stews. Just throw a little bit in to get some vitamins. Okay, now, should we taste it? So here are the cooked greens. See how lovely they are? they're pretty. If you were to go to the store and buy greens like this, it would cost you probably $2 a pound. I don't know. And this is free. Something that normally people would throw away. Whatever you do, don't use poisons in your yard of any kind or garden. And let me give this a test. Folks, I wish you could taste this. This is just as good as kale or collard. This is very, very good. So this is food. Oh, you never wanted to know. Eat some rutabaga tops. Take care.